A sleek white bird with a needle nose. It can fly at twice the speed of sound at 58,000 feet.
We've all enjoyed you over the years from ATC. Best wishes from us all. 121, that's the one that I got. That's right, and likewise, thanks a lot, bye.
Concorde was the aircraft designed to change air travel for good. But 34 years since its maiden flight, it's being taken out of service. Outside the hangar now, it's party time, a celebration of what Concorde came to symbolise. Speed, glamour and a breakthrough in technology for British and French aerospace. But how far has that technology really evolved? There's nothing better, faster, cheaper waiting to replace it. The superpowers were racing to space. Britain and France too wanted something to dream about, something to be proud of.
It was a big decision made. Shall we go fast in UK aviation or shall we go big? And they went for fast because that was what had been successful up to date. It was intended at the beginning to both be a technical challenge, it was going to lead British aerospace into the future, and it was intended to make money. Now, as things turned out, it was perhaps the wrong route to go down.
Britain and France started working on supersonic transport programs in the 50s, both largely funded by their respective governments. By the 60s, they were convinced it was technically possible, but they knew it would be expensive, so they shared ideas, resources and the costs.
Concorde to the Brits and the French is like Space Shuttle is to the Americans.
It's one small step for man, one giant...
1969, the year man walked on the moon, Concorde took its first flight. Regular luxury service began in 1976. British Airways flew from London Heathrow to Bahrain, Air France from Paris to Rio. 3 years later, they got the all clear from the American aviation authorities to land at their airports. Concorde flew non-stop across the Atlantic in record time. Commercial supersonic travel was a reality, something the superpowers didn't make a success.
In a nutshell, Concorde was built in order to wrest the lead back from the Americans, to beat the Americans to supersonic flight. At the time, knowing that they were going to build their own, and so we wanted to get on quickly with Concorde in order to be first and hopefully corner the market.
The Americans never built a prototype. The Russians came up with the Tupolev Tu-144 that bore such a close resemblance to Concorde that the world dubbed it Concordski.
It was said there was a spy working at Toulouse or Filton, where Concorde was being built, who sent the plans of Concorde to Tupolev in Russia. But the plans were intercepted by one of the intelligences, MI whichever, and altered. Result being that Tupolev is the Tu-144 is a poor copy of Concorde.
Technically, Concordski never matched up, and when it crashed at the Paris Air Show in 1973, its fate was sealed. Eventually, it was phased out of service, and decades later was used by Russia and NASA for research. But Concorde was a technological success, and taking the controls was exhilarating.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain. Having been cruising at twice the speed of sound now for just over 2 hours, we're approaching the point where we're going to start our deceleration and descent back down to normal subsonic speed.
Oh, it's a bit like, I suppose, riding a thoroughbred racehorse rather than a riding school hack, or perhaps driving a sports car rather than a truck.
On board, when we fly, oh, it's absolutely magic.
Concorde was like a jet fighter, you know, it is an airline transport, but with the performance of a jet fighter, you know.
Concorde was a time machine. Travelling westwards, the 5-hour time difference between London and New York meant it effectively arrived before it had taken off, travelling faster than the sun. But Concorde didn't sell well. Only 16 were ever built to fly, and they were only ever operated by BA and Air France.
When the historians look back at it, there will be the cost of the airplane, the cost of operating it, the cost of maintaining it. We could never make the cost equation close where we could build it commercially and have it be a viable success. You know, most commercial programs that are successful build in the hundreds, and the total Concorde lot, as you know, is a small fraction of that.
The airline industry was going through a rough patch, and the oil crisis in the 70s made financial matters worse.
The view was, I think, when Concorde was built and designed in the 1950s after all, that supersonic travel may well be the way of the future. It hasn't turned out that way for a number of reasons. Firstly, it was designed and built when fuel in real terms was much cheaper than it is today, before the first of the oil shocks in the mid-70s. And it was one of the things that made Concorde a much more expensive proposition on day one.
Pan Am, TWA, Qantas and all the other major airlines who might have operated Concorde changed their minds.
You can hear it, it's only, what, 4 miles away. And it would start off noisy, and the noise would build, and with the noise, this terrible crackling. And if you weren't familiar with it, you really believed that an aircraft was breaking up in the air above you.
Concorde was limited to where it could fly because of the sonic boom. It stuck mainly to routes over water.
If you were really hard-nosed in economic terms, the manufacturing of a supersonic aeroplane for the manufacturers was a very costly mistake. And on reflection, that's probably true. It would have been a great tragedy, though, I think, if Concorde wasn't built, because it did represent a real step forward in technology terms.
And it quickly became the transport of choice for high flyers and superstars.
Well, I was lucky enough. I've flown the Queen,
Paul McCartney,
the Prime Minister,
Richard
Nixon, Kissinger,
Dame Judi Dench,
Tiger Woods, the golfer sitting behind me,
Madonna, Gwyneth Paltrow, people that Robbie Williams, that and that you think, my God, I can't believe I've met these people.
The romance of Concorde spawned many a love affair, and not just for those who've flown it.
I've not had the opportunity to fly or go on foreign holiday, but if I was going to fly at all, that was going to be it. That was my dream.
Tina McCormack calls Concorde her guardian angel.
You are the angel that God sends me when I feel low. My heart has a special place for you, where you will always remain. Concorde, I love and adore you. My beautiful aeroplane. Sorry.
The first royal aboard Concorde was Prince Philip. He even took the controls. But tight security now means only the flight crew can step inside the cockpit. Concorde's pampered cargo were indulged with fancy food and the finest of champagnes as they cruised on the edge of space.
Well, I'm very sad for the future of civil aviation, because as far as I'm concerned, this was a huge step in technology and being able to travel supersonic speed. And the fact that it is being phased out, I think is quite shocking and very saddening.
It was like a swan in the sky, and especially even now I've had a child. She says, Concorde, 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 you know. It's quite upsetting to think that it's not going to be there anymore.
The journey time between New York and London on Concorde is under 4 hours, but the record is 2 hours, 52 minutes and 59 seconds.
Up here at 58,000 feet, the plane's really hotting up. We're travelling so fast through the air, the plane will actually stretch 6 to 8 inches. And the window is even hot to the touch. It's such a clear day that I'm lucky enough I can see the curvature of the Earth. This is probably the closest to outer space that I'll ever get.
Concorde started to make money for the airlines who ran it when they wrote off the cost of building it.
2852 Boston, good morning.
With charter flights and loyal business and celebrity passengers, Concorde raked in a steady income for British Airways.
In the best years, we made well above £50 million profit, so you can do your own sums on that one. But yes, it made a lot of money.
Then, on the 25th of July 2000, Air France Concorde 4590 crashed just minutes after takeoff in the Paris suburb of Gonesse. All 109 people on board were killed, as well as 4 on the ground. A tyre had been punctured by a stray metal strip on the runway. Pieces of rubber got into the fuel tank and ignited a fire. Air France and BA grounded their Concorde fleets while they improved safety features. But by the time it took to the skies again, the world was very different. Concorde would never be profitable again.
Your determination realized a dream, and your charm won our hearts. Lest you not forget land of hope and glory when fireworks lit the Wembley sky, and you were crowned king. Defeat, divorce, death. Now it's time for his biggest fight yet. Frank Bruno, laid bare. Monday, 10 o'clock, Sky One.
Free inside this weekend's News of the World, get your copy of Sex and the CD. An exclusive 10-track CD packed full of hot hits and steamy classics. Guaranteed to get you in the mood for love. It's free and only in this weekend's News of the World.
When you find the color you love, you want to keep it radiant for longer. But wash after wash, colored hair can fade and lose its radiance.
New L'Oreal Elvive 3-Step Color Protect program with 50% more UV filter and a complex of nourishing agents. Color Protect keeps your color truer, longer.
I take control of my color.
Your hair color will shine for longer with 70% more radiance.
It's my #1 color care program.
New Elvive Color Protect from L'Oreal Paris.
Because you're worth it.
Some girls have their own smart ways in finding comfort. For a few days a month, Tampax Compact's the way to comfort. It has a smooth plastic applicator, so compared with any other Tampax, it glides better. For better comfort, Tampax Compact, made to go unnoticed. Now there's lights for the lighter days.
At Courts, these cool vanilla leather sofas are just $5.99 the pair. And with multi-save, there's an extra 10% off when you buy across 2 or more departments. Extra savings at Courts this weekend.
Dial for a Loan helps thousands of homeowners find an affordable loan tailored to fit their circumstances. Even if you've had problems getting credit elsewhere, Dial for a Loan could help you. For a quick decision and free advice, visit dialforaloan.com/TV or call 0800 093 7769. Dial for a Loan. They'll find the right loan for you.
Stable, smooth, quiet. The beautifully built Ford Focus C-Max.
Concorde looked like a plane that belonged to the future, not one about to be relegated to the past. When it was built, the aviation industry had taken a giant leap forward. Yet as it flies into the history books, there's no aircraft to replace Concorde with. Neither is there the will, the way, nor the financial means for a supersonic successor yet. In November 2001, 16 months after the Paris crash, Concorde was relaunched with tougher tyres and rubber-lined fuel tanks, costing BA and Air France about £50 million. At the time, it was a new beginning, not the beginning of the end.
I mean, it was such an excitement for all of us to be able to fly again this great adventure, as a matter of fact. And we had no idea that one day it's going to stop, you know. But the airlines made its choice about it for economical reason, like you know, and we have to accept it. But it's kind of sad, of course.
At that time, they thought they were going to make money commercially again, as Concorde had been up to that moment. So there was every justification for doing it. I won't say that the main driving force was so that Airbus could say that they had produced a safe aircraft ultimately with the modifications, but I'm sure that that was a factor.
But the world had changed. 9/11, foot and mouth in Britain, SARS, conflict in the Middle East, corporate scandals like WorldCom and Enron.
In Concorde's heyday, business hotshots zip between Paris or London and New York, keen to sign a deal and be home in time for happy hour. But when Concorde was grounded, many firms had the time to work out how much further their travel budgets would go if they didn't fly supersonic. And it turned out that fewer people were prepared to pay such a high premium for speed.
Passenger numbers were dwindling. BA was only selling half its Concorde seats. Air France Concorde was flying barely a fifth full.
Is it the French's fault? Possibly. I would say that Concorde is going out of service because the French wanted to pull out of the supersonic service sooner than the British did. The problem being that Chirac had taken a view over Iraq, which meant that the Americans were boycotting the Paris-New York service, and they were carrying silly figures, 10 or even less. And so they were losing a lot of money on that service.
What British Airways are trying to do is like having, you know, if you've got two shops side by side and you own them both, if you close one shop, hopefully the passengers will go into your other shop. By getting rid of Concorde, they hope to fill up their empty subsonic planes with Concorde passengers and therefore make better profits.
Concorde already guzzled twice as much fuel as a subsonic jet and needed 5 times as many engineers to keep it airworthy. As it got older, maintenance costs crept higher.
Well, Concorde's like any aeroplane. It reaches a point in time where the maintenance expenses associated with keeping it aloft outweigh the economic benefits of flying it. It was true of the 707, it was true of the DC-3, both great aeroplanes in their time. It's true, sadly, of Concorde as well. Aeroplanes, as they get older, become much more maintenance intensive, and it's that maintenance cost which ultimately undermines the operating economics of an aeroplane, any aeroplane, including Concorde.
And after discussions with Airbus, who manufactured Concorde, it became clear that those costs were too high to bear.
It's the first time in aviation history that we've actually taken a backward step. You know, from the end of October, that is the end of the supersonic era. So, you know, from an aviation historic point of view, it is extremely sad.
Concorde was a symbol of national pride. It had fans both sides of the channel.
The Concorde to me is an emblem of an era that's gone, when you could spend money to go to the moon and you could do something like build a supersonic airliner, and it made sense.
It's a symbol of what technology could do, and it has been so special.
No, I can't say goodbye to Concorde because Concorde will be always in my heart and in my soul. I can't say goodbye.
But now time has run out to rescue it.
I think that, you know, if there is a British company willing to operate them, if necessary, only for heritage purposes, so BA haven't actually got a competitor, then the government should intervene to make sure that those Concordes are operated for heritage purposes going forward.
You're putting me in overdrive.
Those at the controls thought Concorde would fly until there was a replacement for it.
I thought there'd be a replacement much sooner than there is now, But I'm just suggesting that with the demise of Concorde, maybe that's going to be the catalyst which will cause people to think seriously about the possibility of building a successor.
But the problem was, who pays to develop and improve supersonic wizardry?
Putting a man on the moon, flying supersonically, extraordinary events in their own right.
Despite the billions that were spent, about £30 billion in today's money, they never resolved the sonic boom.
The rumble of Concorde coming into land is nothing like the noise it makes when it flies supersonic. It creates a sonic boom so loud it can shatter glass.
If I had a magic wand, I would have used it to change the environmental impact that the aeroplane has, somehow resolve the sonic boom issue, and to make it in real terms a cheaper aeroplane to fly so that more people could fly. Because if more people could have flown it and the airlines that flew it could have made money, more airlines would have bought it, more would have been built, and the program may have just been economically viable.
The Air France fleet retired in May. Now 3 of its Concordes take pride of place in museums in France. One's in the States, the other in Germany.
There's a sadness and a sense of disappointment that the Concorde era has come to an end. Not just from the champagne quaffing set who relied on Concorde to speed up journey times and travel in style, but also from literally hundreds of thousands of fans who truly believed that this mode of transport would change the world.
Airbus will have its A380 Super Jumbo that can ship 550 passengers all in one go. Boeing is developing the 787, a medium-sized jet that will be super efficient rather than super fast. The world's 2 biggest plane makers want good value more than they crave speed.
I think there will be continued research. My view is that some sort of government activity between Europe and the United States, including Asia, the major, to have a kind of a world development project, because the risks of this project will be substantial and the rewards would be shared by so many. The likelihood of one company taking that on, at least in the near term, is not very high. Will we continue to study it? Absolutely. Is Airbus studying it? I imagine so. But is anyone going to take a very large portion of the research and development budget and take the risk for what the apparent reward is? I don't think so.
But some still hold out some hope.
After all, it really did happen. It wasn't a prediction of what might have happened. The French have a word for it. They say engraved on the marble. It really was an achievement.
Someday I think there'll be another one.
I hope that I'll be able to travel supersonically one day again on the son of Concorde or the daughter of Concorde.
I'm sure it'll happen again. I can't imagine my 9-year-old daughter telling her children, remember the days when Grandad used to cross the Atlantic in 3 hours and 20, now it always takes 8.5. I don't think that's around the corner, but I'm sure it will happen.
I don't think you'll get another replacement for Concorde. I think what you'll probably find is the next generation. Hypersonic could be something way out there, but I don't think you'll find another supersonic commercial airliner.
Perhaps Concorde was ahead of its time, because far more people flew supersonic than ever walked on the moon. Now, aviation isn't quite back where it started because the technology is there, but it's in limbo. One day, the scientists might crack it, and if they do, a Concorde successor could be chasing the sun.
What do you think? Just how big a part of aviation history is
Say that
Concorde?
again.
Aviation history is Concorde. Better the second time round. Why don't you do the rest?
Okay, I'm
Okay.
so clever. Satellite viewers in the UK can have their
Teacher.
say in our active vote. We're asking Concorde versus the jumbo jet. Which one changed the world? Just press the red button on your digital remote control, select News Active, follow the simple instructions, and you can take part in our vote. Well, it's fairly conclusive at the moment, of course, as you might expect on this historic day. Concorde is out in front, 78%, jumbo jet 22%. Have you been on Concorde?
Yes, I have.
So have I.
Well, of
So
course.
should we compare notes?
I think we should, actually. Which would you, if you had a choice, would you fly like horrible old jumbo jet or beautiful Concorde?
Well,
not that I'm biased in the way I phrase that question.
Definitely. I'd fly on a jumbo jet any day if I was in first class, of course.
Oh, so is there any other way of flying? Because if you're in Concorde, you are in first class as a matter of course, aren't you?
This is true. This is very true. Now,
right.
Let's be serious for a moment because, as you may know, the former royal butler Paul Burrell has come under fierce criticism from Prince William, who's objected